Good morning, everybody. You know that things are really tough when you have a used car salesman talking to you about kids. You know, what I always, it's fun for me to be over at the state capitol and talk to some of the hotshots there, and I always say, you know, there's 2 used car salesmen in this room. And they say, well, what do you mean? Well, everyone know the Governor Doug McKay? Doug McKay was Capital Chevrolet, mayor of Salem, and then became governor, and then became under Eisenhower, became the director for agriculture. I want to give a special shout out to Fairborse for taking the time to be here. I want to tell you a quick story and get off the subjects a little bit here, though. But you know, the example of small hinges can open up big doors is really an example of what we're talking about today. Fairborse, when he was at the Oregon Youth Authority, and now, of course, he's director of Department of Human Services. I should probably I'll take a moment of silence and and pray for him. But Fairborse and Fairborse got me involved in the Oregon Youth Authority and with the kids that were on Major 11, and so we started working with that up at the McLaren. But we got the idea that we needed the community to get involved with these kids coming out of prison, and we wanted the community, just like we're talking about this morning here. And so we had this big idea about going throughout the state and talking about Oregon Youth Authority. And we went to like Medford, and of course I know the Lithia group and Sid DeBoer, and so we went to the Medford Country Club and we gave our spiel. And next month we went over to Tillamook, and went to Tillamook, and you know, the town of 101 goes right through Tillamook, and so we were going to meet the Kiwanis group there in this restaurant. So we got out of our car, got into the restaurant, to the restaurant part, then we went into the bar part, then we went into the pool part, and then we went to where the people were going to meet us. And there was about 6 people there. I'm thinking, you know, hey, you know, I'm a schmuck from Salem, Oregon. I mean, where's our big country club group here of 150 people with Sid DeBoer being there, and here, what's the deal here? So we gave our spiel. Out of that meeting came the best return on investment that we did the whole state. Out of that came, Connie Green was the Chemeketa president, so she coordinated with over there at the Tillamook Juvenile Center there so they could go to the community college. Simpson Lumber Company was right next to the authority. What was that called? What's that called over there? The Tillamook. Is it just called Tillamook? Yeah, the Tillamook Juvenile, where people are incarcerated there. The young people were mainly sex offenders, and they weren't able to go out of the gate, but decided we got all that, Fairborse got that all worked out so they could plant trees. Yeah, and I'm telling you, it went on and on and on. The town of Tillamook adopted them for Thanksgiving and for Christmas and for spring vacation breaks and stuff. I mean, people were working there. So you never know. And the real thing is that small hinges opens big doors. Well, welcome this morning to SafeFamilies, what we're talking about. It's been quite a journey here in Oregon. You might recall back in, here's how it happened. I guess the first thing is the first questions, couple of questions you want to ask is, can anything good come out of Chicago? And then the second question is, can anything good come out of us getting together? And I think the answer is a resounding yes to both. But just, you talk about a God thing. Peter Courtney's chief of staff was visiting a cousin in Chicago and read in the newspaper about this SafeFamilies. Came back in 2010 and presented it to Senator Courtney. He swallowed the bait, hook, line, and sinker, and investigated SafeFamilies and put it to the legislature. You might recall in 2010 and 2011, much like it is maybe a little today, but then it was really a split House, split Senate, and it was the only law, and I think it's the only law since, I didn't go investigate this, that passed with no negative votes on. I mean, you might remember it was SB 991 about what defined Let me read this to you. What defines safe families? It defined in law the voluntary assumption of short-term care and control of minor, child, or ward without the expectation of compensation or reimbursement of expenses for the purpose of providing a parent in crisis with relief from the demands of ongoing care of the parent's child. And it went through with unanimous vote in favor, and the House Speaker was Dave Hunt at the time. So we initiated, the initial launch was in Marion County in 2011. We had a breakfast just about like this. And at that time we presented the safe, and Dave Anderson came back and we presented to the community leaders and asked them for support. I think one thing that we will say the theme needs to be, and this is from my point of view, is that it's the community that needs to take responsibility. It's not going to be Faribault by itself. It's not going to be the state government by itself. It's going to be the community coming together and coming out of the bleachers and getting in the field and help the expansion of safe families. Safe families is going to be, we're celebrating today the expansion of Bend, Medford, Portland, Lane County, Marion, Polk, course, and Yamhill counties and Baker City. I represent investors. People ask, because I'm at my age and have been in the community 48 years here in Salem, and a business person and away from my business now, they ask for contributions. Well, I don't contribute money to cover expenses. I contribute money to organizations like this for results. I want to purchase results. And Safe Families give, and you will hear this morning about results. I think this is a organization that can have a 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64 effect on having families be safe and not go into the Department of Human Services control. We want to thank today the Ford Foundation. The Ford Foundation, it's hard for me to say that word Ford. It's not Jackie Winters. Her son-in-law has a Ford dealership. That bothers me also. But it's the Lumber Ford Foundation out of Roseburg. And since I said Chokers going through college, I know all about the lumber business. And so we want to thank them for supporting us. Well, you're not here to hear a used car salesman talk, so we want to hear about Dave Anderson, the founder and executive director of Safe Families for Children. Safe Families was founded in 2003 as a nonprofit, came out of Chicago, spread to 108 cities, and it's been across the globe, actually, internationally. They have 50,000 volunteers, 250 churches, 400 host houses, 40,000 host houses, and I'm telling you, it's going like wildfire throughout the United States. So Dave Anderson, bring us up to date what's going on, and challenge this group to get off their fannies and get to work. Okay?
All right, let me just. Okay, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm gonna just speak for a short time, and then we're gonna hear from some families that are serving as well. But I just wanted to, first of all, thank Jim Seymour and the group, Catholics group that has been housing Safe Families for last few years. And if you're in Safe Families, like running a Safe Family in another area, can you just raise your hand and we could see the different representation of Safe Families around the area. I think we have people from Colorado and Alaska and all sorts of people here. And thank you for Karen for inviting me to participate and joining me in Safe Families. So I started Safe Families 15 years ago. I was working in a large medical center, and my job was to interview children in order to put their parents in jail and to do psychological assessments of what is the psychological impact of child abuse. And I would testify in court and do all sorts of things. Then I shifted. I thought, in Illinois, child welfare, foster care, and everything is privatized. So I thought, well, I'll try and help children after they've been abused, after they go into the foster care system. And so I'll run a foster care program. And we ran a foster care program and all sorts of things. And I found two things, and I was a foster parent. I found two things. I found that once kids are in the system, at least in Illinois, it's very difficult to get them back again. In fact, at the time, I think it was 20%, 25%, they call it reunification rate, right? And then secondly, in running a foster care program, I found that most of my staff's time was serving the system and very little time actually with families. And I calculated, and it was roughly 70% of their time was with the system, doing reports, doing all sorts of important things, and 35% was actually with the family. And when they were with the family, they would ask questions to serve the system, because they had to report it to the system. And we found that the people that were recruited to foster care had difficulty actually doing what they wanted to do, which is be with families. And so I started to look into this whole thing and realized, I don't know if you realize this, but I realized this, that the modern welfare system was developed in Britain by this guy whose name is William Bradford. And they purposely defined and developed the system on a couple different things. One is they had to determine who was eligible for the system. Welfare system, medical services, all public. So they had to create this way of determining who is eligible, but more importantly, who is not eligible. And then because resources were unlimited, they had to begin to restrict the access and how long someone could get the resources. And in order to do that, you had to do a couple things. One is you had to build something that was somewhat anonymous, right? That if you're a recipient, you don't have a relationship with those that are providing you resources, right? The second thing is that it had to build it around transactions. Everything was about transactions. Transactions in how much food stamps you received, transactions in how much counseling they would give you, transactions around all these different systems thing. And I started to think about why parents actually find themselves in the child welfare system. And I worked at University of Chicago and did some research there and found that the leading reason that parents find themselves in difficulty is this thing called a lack of informal support, right? All that means to me is they don't have caring people around them. Now, if you think about it, if you're in trouble, and we all get into trouble, right? Many of us get into trouble. It's a health trouble or whatever. I remember I had to go to the hospital suddenly for a period of time, and within an hour, I had 10 families offer to take my children without even asking them. 10 families. The problem with some of our families in our society is they have no one to step up and ask them for help. They have no one. Even when they ask, they get turned down. And so the trouble is, if you're going through difficulty and you lose your job, or your landlord doesn't pay the mortgage and you become homeless, there is no one there to step up and to help you out. And we know that when bad things happen and they continue to happen, that's when difficulties occur, particularly around children. I know that when my wife was gone, she went with her sister to Cancun or something for a week, and I was home alone with the kids for a week. By Friday of that week, it was not a pretty sight. I was short, I was angry, the house was a mess, and that's just because my wife was gone. That wasn't because I was about to lose my job, I was about to be homeless and things like that. And so when someone is trying to do this by themselves and they don't have anyone around them to help them out, that's when things begin to have difficulty. So I started this idea called SafeFamilies really out of a very simple idea. And the idea is, how do we come alongside moms primarily, or moms and dads, and build a network of support around them to help them out. Not anything that's built around transactions, but it's built around relationships. And that was the key difference. It wasn't about, I'm going to help you for a short period of time, and then I'm going to be gone and move on to something else. I'm going to be helping you for however long you want. Through the good, through the bad, after, before, however long you want, I'm going to help you. And so we started, and we decided to do a couple things. We felt like we needed what we call host families, because some moms are in such difficulty, they need their child to go somewhere so that they can more quickly pull themselves together and get back on their feet, right? They need somewhere to go so that they can more quickly make the change. But they also need these other things. We call them family friend, people who are willing to come around them. And what the UK and SafeFamilies, it exploded in the UK, I think because of the beverage report. The UK calls it simply befriending. They call it befriending. So I started it with my wife and I, and then a couple moms started coming, and more people needed help, and I was pastoring a church, and I would walk into church and say, can anyone take these kids? And everyone would scatter, and I never did this before. I wrote a letter to Mayor Daley, and I said, Mayor Daley, I had this idea. We could find hundreds of people to build a safety net, driven by volunteers, build a safety net for families and their kids. And I forgot, I never wrote anyone famous before. Mayor Daley in Chicago is more popular than any of our governors, which isn't really hard to do because many of them are in jail. But he eventually called and said, is that on TV? I hope not. He called and said, the secretary called and said, the mayor's intrigued by your idea. So I went and talked to him. His main question was, is New York doing this? And I'm like, no, we could beat New York. Very competitive against New York, I don't know. And he said, what do you need? I said, well, how about $50,000? And he said, oh, that's easy. I said, darn, I should ask for $100,000. And so we got started. And it was a simple idea. Let's find host families to take in kids. No one's going to want money. The parent decides how long. The parent decides when they want their child back. The parent maintains all rights to their kid. It's like creating extended family for moms who don't have extended family. They make the decision, and then let's surround them with other people that are willing to help them out, and let's befriend them for however long, including potentially years, because they become like family. So it started with us, it started with a handful of people, but the mayor said, in order to move ahead, you have to meet with the head of DCFS to get his blessing. So I met with him, the Irish mafia-looking guy, very threatening, and said, what's your idea? I told him my idea. He said two things. Well, the main thing he said, it'll never ever work, don't bother wasting your time. I was like, okay, why won't it work? And he said, children are not valuable in our society. They're just not. And he said, and I said, oh, you're in charge of children and they're not valuable? And he said, there's two reasons. He said, people care about things they own, right? For your own kids, most of us as parents would die, literally die for our own child without a thought. Would simply say, kill me, without even thinking about it. Or when they adopt them, it becomes this ownership thing, and they would treat them as if they're own. And he said, why do you think we have such a hard time finding foster families? And we can't even pay people enough to take in kids. It's because this problem of ownership in our society. So if you were to be successful, you have to convince people to care about someone else's child without getting paid, without adopting them, without keeping them, without owning them, care for them and raise them as if they were their own, and then give them back when the mom wants them. Never, ever, ever work. That's not the American way. So you ever have those moments of like, oh my gosh, should I quit? It's not going to work. He's right. It's not going to work, blah, blah. So we went ahead, and Dick shared our impact. It has just exploded, and it's incredibly surprising to me, right? That I think it's part of being American, right? To care about someone else. That it's not all about money and achieving and doing my own thing. It's about giving back to someone else. And for those of us who are part of the church, which I am, and many of us are, it's not debatable. That's what we're commanded to do. To care for those who need help, to love them, to open our homes, open our arms, treat them as if they were our own. And then SafeFamilies has exploded. We're in Chicago, we have 1,200 host families in Chicago. We place 1,000 children a year in safe family homes. Dick was our first law here. Since then, we've done 15 state laws, and we're part of helping this Family First law get started around preventing, shifting funds to those that before kids are harmed. And then SafeFamilies has incredibly exploded in the UK. Thousands and thousands of people are helping people in difficulty. Because if your kid goes into foster care in the UK, I think they tell me it's 60,000 pounds a year, which is $90,000 for a child to go into foster care in the UK. In Illinois, DCFS we're an incredible partner of DCFS. At the moment of decision, they will offer families SafeFamilies as an alternative and allow them to be supported in part of a community, brought into a family. And we're beginning to see significant change with helping them reduce the number of kids going into foster care. But let me just end with this. What I think makes a difference about SafeFamilies isn't the hosting of kids in homes. I don't think that's it. Although, having your child go stay with someone for a month while you, deal with your depression or deal with drugs or whatever you need to overcome is helpful. Because it's hard to do that if every day you're worrying about your kids. So that's needed, right? What I think makes SafeFamilies unique is this concept that the UK come up with is befriending, right? What befriending means, it's a very complicated, it means be a friend, right? And it's actually quite countercultural. It takes people who, like me, who is a host family, befriending someone who is very different than I am, that I might not normally befriend. I was taking care of a little boy, and his mom was in drug treatment, and she had to deal with some drugs. She was on cocaine and stuff. And so I would take him every week to visit this mom. And on Saturday, they had what they called multi-family groups. So all the people that were getting drug treatment would have their families come in, and they would have this big group. Well, I didn't know that was occurring. And so I brought the child in, and I sat, and everyone was sitting around. And I was sitting next to this boy's mom. And then all of a sudden they said, okay, let's start. And I'm thinking, well, let's start what? Right? I'm just there for their child to visit their mom, right? And they said, thank you for coming today. And I realized out of like 20 people that were there for treatment, only 2 of them had family members. And so all of a sudden they turned to me, the leader, and says, can you tell us your name and how are you feeling today? And I'm like, do they think I'm with her? I had sweats, I had holes in my sweats, I looked like a complete bum. And I was gonna say, oh, I'm not with her. But then I thought, okay, well, my name is Dave and I'm fine. Very self-revealing, right? Very self-revealing. And I'm thinking, I wonder what everyone thinks. And all of a sudden, this little boy we're caring for comes running across the room in front of him, raising his hand, saying, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." And I picked him up, sat on my lap, and we hung out for the group. That's what befriending is. That mom needed someone to sit next to her, to be her friend, to talk with her, to visit with her. And the thing that I think moms need is someone who's willing to stick it out through the thick and thin, so when they relapse, when they have difficulty again, someone is there for them. Someone who is authentic and doesn't have all the answers, and someone who is not getting paid to be there. I was a foster parent, and I was trying to befriend the mom of my foster child, and she said to me, "Dave, you'll never be my friend." She said, "If I got paid what you got paid, I wouldn't be in this situation." Now, that wasn't completely true, but in her mind, it was true. And she saw us as a rival for her child's attention, because she knew that if she screwed up, we would be asked to take her child and adopt him. So there was difficulty in engaging and developing a relationship with her. But that's the secret of Safe Families, is befriending. It's not a transaction. It's not a transaction. It's a relationship. And you know what's so interesting? In the UK now, they've been doing it for 5 years. All of a sudden, through the large universities, Dartington and all these things, they're starting to come up with these different languages for around helping families. They're calling it relational policies, relational strategies. And this idea of parents don't need transactions, they need relationships. But it's difficult for the government to do that. It's difficult for the government to do that. That's where we come in. And that's where we become a partner with the government in supporting families who need our help. B.J. Walker, she was the commissioner of the state of Georgia, DHS, and now is head of DCFS. She said, and she was at one of our conferences, and she spoke, and she said, "Dave, you guys do something that no one else does. Not only do your people love children, which everyone loves children, right? Who wouldn't love? If I said to you, there's a child sleeping in a car right now, and it's going to get cold tonight, and that child needs a place to stay tonight. If you're an American, most of us would raise our hand and say, they can come and stay with me." Right? That's the nature. If you're of faith, you should absolutely say that. Right? Because those are our commands. Right? She said, B.J. Walker, Commissioner Walker said, "You guys love children, but you do something no one else does, and that's redeem parents. You redeem parents." And why? This was interesting. She said, "Why?" And she said, "Because that's what the child wants the most." You have this little guy in your home, and they're being cared for, and you have a nice home, and maybe you have a pool, and you have all these nice things. They don't want to stay with you. They want to go back to mom, right? My that little boy that ran across the hall and said, "Daddy, Daddy," and and we're visiting his mom, Angie. His name is Connor. Angie got out of drug treatment and was murdered by her boyfriend. All their families were struggling with drugs, and one of the sisters said, "Can you do us a favor and adopt Connor? Because there's no one else, and we don't want him to go into the state." And so I took Connor in. He's 13. You know what he said last week? His mom died 10 years ago. He said, "I miss Mama Angie, and I want to be with her. And despite how good of parents we are, I'm a child psychologist. I created Safe Families. My wife's a social worker. We have a dog. We have this nice home." He wants to be with his mom. And so that's why those of us who are in Safe Families give everything we can to help the mom. Because that's what the child wants the most, is to be back with mom. And we know if mom can become part of our extended family, right? We have a mom who got her kids back 3 years ago. She was struggling with drugs and homelessness, and we befriended her. She comes to our house every Easter, every Christmas. When she's in trouble, she calls us and says, can you take my kids? When she had to go to the hospital, she called us and said, can you take my kids? That's what Safe Families is about. And I just want to end with this. God can use anything. These moms, they don't want perfect people. They don't want answers. They don't want me to tell them what to do, because they could probably figure out what to do. They needed someone to care for them. And I think God can use anything we have. And I just imagine, I don't know, maybe there's 100 people here. I think there's 600 kids went into foster care last year in Salem. And I know not everyone's from Salem, but what if everyone here befriended a mom? We could immediately reduce foster care by 100 kids, which is what we're doing in other areas. Immediately do that. And God could use anything, and I know that. I went to speak, I'm going to close it. I went to speak at a youth rally in India. And there was 3,000 kids, and they had TVs of the speaker, and I was one of the speakers, and it was 110 degrees, hot as ever, right? And I was speaking, and but before you go on stage, I didn't know this, and it was right around Easter, so I was talking about Christ and the crucifixion. But before you go on stage, you have to take off your shoes. So someone said, oh, stop, you have to take off your shoes. So I took off my shoes, and I stepped and stepped to go on stage, and there was this huge beam, old wooden beam that was part of the roof. And I stepped and I walked right into this beam. You ever bump your head where you actually feel it in your spine? And I was woozy. I probably had one of those concussions that a lot of football players. But I got up there, and the guy was like, "Oh, are you okay? Are you okay?" And I didn't say anything, and says, "Okay, I assume that means you're okay." So I got up there and I started speaking, and I was sweating. And, it was dripping down on my shirt, and I was hot, and I thought, oh, I hope I'm okay. And everybody was staring at me. 3,000 people, not a word. And I said, anyone interested in learning more? Everyone raised their hand. And I'm like, wow, that's incredible. And I get down, and I feel my head. I had a big bunch of splinters sticking out of my forehead. And I felt, and I wiped away the sweat, and it was all blood that was dripping down my shirt. And I was talking about the crucifixion and the thorns in Christ's head and all sorts of things, and blood was all over me. An American guy was with me, and he said, "Hey, Dave, that drama thing you did up there was really cool. How did you think of it?" I didn't know what to say. I said, "Oh, it just hit me when I was walking on the stage." My point is, anything we have can be used. Anything. All of us have an opportunity to make a difference. All of us, every single one of us. Maybe you don't want to host a kid, but could you be a friend to a mom? Maybe you don't want to be friend to mom because you don't like people, but do you have things that you could share with someone else who doesn't have those things? And not having those things create incredible difficulties for them. So thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for participating in Safe Families. And I'm so excited about this collaborative and what's going to spring from all of our efforts here today. Thank you so much.
I'd like to introduce one of our host families and her daughter and a couple other children that might be with her today. Sierra and Debbie McBeth have opened up their home for children, and they're in a rural community. And I'm excited to say that they have hosted 9 different children, and they have done over 217 days and nights of respite. Now, if you do the math, that's about 7 months. They've only been with us for 2 years. So they've changed the lives of 9 children. So Debbie, are you coming up? We can have a little bit of a conversation. And Sierra? Thank you. That's my husband. He's my assistant. So we're all set here. So Deborah, or Debbie, excuse me.
Okay.
Could you just let us know a little bit about how you decided to become involved in SafeFamilies?
How we really started was, it was a family from Gals of Grace, and she had asked if we would be willing to take a father and a son to church. And at that time, we had no idea that he had been getting wonderful opportunities to go to wrestling camp and all these things through SafeFamilies. And so then we went ahead and got set up with Miss Teri and became a host family. I know you want to talk. This is Lucas. Hi. Can I have that back for just a second? He has one at home because Sierra got him one that does Mickey and the Roadster Racers. So anyway, and I just wanted to say that it was my husband, Clayton. He is in the Coast Guard, and he mentors a lot of people. And he was able to come and alongside the dad that had had an addiction and was an older dad. And he had a really young son, 10, 11 years old. And he just felt like he couldn't do it anymore. He asked us, please, please, please take him. And we're like, no. We're going to all work together. This is what we do. We're here to support you. We're here to support the young man that was about my son's age. Tucker, and that was an experience in itself. To have the first young man come into the home and be just a smidge younger than my son, but it definitely has made him become, has really shown him how important it is to help families, to help boys, girls, whatever age. Usually it's a little better if we can keep him under his age, and he's 13. But we've tried. A little above and definitely below. So, and we just wanted to make sure that there were struggles with behavior, and they were able to go through all of that process with my husband mentoring them, with, I'm making sure that the child is at school. And it was amazing to see how he could change the dad, but then also going into counseling with the young man, with the dad. And it was amazing because you could see things were changing. The issues that they had, they were working them out in their relationship with themselves. And the last I heard from Amy was that they were doing very well, that he had sent her an email and was just thankful that SafeFamilies had really jumped in, and that there were people, willing to step up and help them, because he really felt lost prior to that. So, and I want to say thank you to Kim Connolly back there, the Connolly family. She was an awesome host coach, so we really couldn't have done it without her, because we were all, this was kind of a new learning thing, how to get started and and know what we were expected, from us. And Teri, there again, she is the most encourager person. She is wonderful. And she made the process so easy. You really did. You're so calming, you're so gracious, and it made us feel like we were already part of the SafeFamilies. I mean, just as we first started. So, and then Amy, she stepped in, and she's helped us too, as Teri was able to take on the foster initiative, and she stepped in, and it was wonderful. So, And now we have Esmeralda. So we've kind of got the whole crew helping us out all the time whenever we need them.
Yeah.
So, okay.
But I'd like to say that you're being very humble. The young man that you're helping, there was a combative relationship, and Dad was ready to surrender him to anybody that would take him. And now, my understanding, he's getting like almost straight A's in school.
Yeah.
He's engaged in extracurricular activities, and it's made an incredible difference. But I wanted to ask Sierra a little bit how hosting impacts the family, and maybe you could say how you feel about it.
So I know for us, it's been really good. We've actually really loved it. It makes us come closer as a family. Having my dad gone for 2.5 years, it was kind of weird when I was younger, but it was just because Coast Guard being active duty didn't really make it easy. So having all these kids come in, and it makes it really good for us to come back together as a family and feel like it. It also makes me really excited because I see her and I see my dad play with him. It makes me really excited for when I do end up having kids, because then I get to see them as grandparents. So.
Thank you. I don't know if you have anything else you'd like to, oh, I know. So people are hesitant sometimes about SafeFamilies and maybe the commitment, but I know we have a variety of roles that people could play or perform. What would be some of your advice for those that are kind of on the fence thinking, oh, everybody else should do this? Do you have anything to share?
Well, we just were kind of thinking about it, and sorry. Really, it's a reward. My husband definitely said it, that it is a reward to be able to help these families, to help these moms, these dads, and all of these children. It's more. It's not a sacrifice. It's just we're there to support. We're there to be at the hospital if we need to be. And I want people to realize that it's not a bad thing. Just like Dave said, it's we're out there to I guess mentor in a little bit of a way, and it's not a scary thing. They make you feel so comfortable, and when you have, it's a God thing. I'll just share that for my husband and I and the kids, and it's, like I said, amazing for my son to see what addiction can do, what abuse can do, and that he can be. He knows that it's important to be able to support other people as he gets older. On top of that, so and he's 13, she's 20, and then I have a 25-year-old, and it's the same thing. He would jump in right now if he could. So it's just not a scary thing. That's for me. I don't see her.
It's not scary.
Oh.
Okay.
I just thank
I
you.
just treat him as younger
Thank you.
siblings.
Thank you. Thank all of you for letting us be able to do this for all of these children. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm gonna disappear.
So next, I'd like to introduce Christy Sanders. She's got her two wonderful children here, Cameron and Malia. I've known Christy I was just looking, Christy, and it's been 2 years. It's been a great journey and continues to be so. Annie Bean, I don't know if she was able to make it. Oh, Annie, yay. It's Annie's birthday today. She's the host family, her and her husband, who's a physician in town, actually. So just putting that out to everybody that thinks they don't have time to host. And 4 children and 1 on the way. And so they've been the host family for Christy over these last couple of years and continue to have a relationship with her. So, Christy, I'll just hand it over to you. Maybe you can just tell what you feel comfortable with, maybe how we got connected and how things are going, and just advice for our audience.
Good morning. How y'all doing? I'm a Texan, so I still say y'all. I'm a long way from home. I met Miss Teri about right at 2 years ago. I was a hot mess when we met, and when I tell you hot, I mean it was horrible. I just recently went through a death. My fiance passed away, and it was devastating for me. I had just moved here. I was here for maybe 4 months. You know, I wanted to get my feet in the ground and get my business going, and my biggest supporter passed away, you know, and it was literally overnight. The night before he passed away, we were roasting marshmallows with our kids, talking about our future. The next morning, I walked in to him not being alive. So I always tell people, whoever you have in your life, you know, go home tonight and you tell them you love them, because you never know. And it really just put me into a deep depression. I mean, I couldn't get up. I didn't even know which way was left, which way was right. My kids were really taking care of me at that point. A good friend of mine, it's crazy. I mean, I prayed and prayed, and I thought I wanted to die. I didn't know what to do. And I just prayed and prayed and prayed, and one day, I call them angels to this day. One day, Miss Teri and her assistant came in my room, and I couldn't get out of the bed. And I thought that they were people from the state. And a lot of people already have their mind made up. If you've ever dealt with the state, you know that they're not sincere. And so when they came to me and they talked to me and they laid by my bedside, and I told them I wanted to give up. I have no support. I'm away from Texas. I have no family. The person that I loved is gone. How am I going to figure this out? And these people, they helped me so much. Little by little, the next day, Teri was bringing a pizza to the door. They had a safe family there to just to talk to. Someone to help me with my kids after school, or just pick them up for a couple of days just so I could breathe, just so I could get my house clean, just so I could take a shower. It was a big deal, and a lot of people didn't understand. And when you go through something like this, you think you know who your friends are, but it took a complete stranger to come and to help me and to feed my children. And so when I tell you SafeFamilies is one of the most important organizations that this country, that the state needs, I would definitely recommend it. I want to say I got connected with my Safe Family, Miss Annie back there. They are amazing, okay? When she came to me and told me that she was going to take care of my 2 kids and she already had 4 kids, I was looking at her like she was crazy, because I already have enough with my own 2. We connected very easily. I was able to go to her house, and you know, it was just very open. You know, she was able to share with me just different things and how, you know, she runs her household, and I was able to pick up some of those things. I'm very, very thankful for her and her husband for pushing me on. I was able to get back onto my career, which is I wanted to do hair here in Salem. And I don't know if anybody knows this, but there's not any ethnic shops here in this area. So I really wanted to make an impact for a lot of the adopted children or children that had ethnic hair that people didn't know what to do. And so I started, I'll never forget, Miss Annie is the one who helped me create my card. And if it was not for her helping me create that card, I would have not moved on to getting my license. Within 2 months of her helping me create my card, I had my license here for the state of Oregon to do hair. Within, I want to say 6 months of that, I opened my own shop, and I was able to do hair. And then maybe 3 months after that, we opened up a beauty supply, which is a big deal because the closest beauty supply here is an hour away. So at this point, we are definitely helping mothers. I have a lot of people that, you know, adopt children or children that have kinky hair, and it's a lot different than the slick hair. So I have people that come in like, help me, what do I do? And it's just amazing to be able to give back to the community, to help out, and to share my story. You know, a lot of the times it takes 6 to 8 hours to do our hair sometimes, so we have a lot of time to sit and talk. So I'm able to share my story about SafeFamilies. I'm able to share my story with life just to encourage other people, because I don't think I would have been able to get through it without them. I don't want to say that I have great days every day, and I think that's everybody. You know, some days we go running, and then some days I have these days where I'm crushed and I'm like, I don't know if what I'm doing is right, if I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I think one thing about SafeFamilies is these two women, they always pop up. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, good or bad. They pop up and I love it. You know, I could be having a great day and they'll call me. I could be having a horrible day and they don't even know, and they'll call me. And it just helps me get through my day, get through everything, and just get back on track. So another thing that I wanted to add is recently I opened up, I wanted to help some women that were struggling with, how do I say this properly? I guess you can say addictions. But a lot of these girls, they worked in the nightlife. And so I definitely wanted to make a difference and a change. One of my best friends passed as of last year due to the nightlife. And at that point, I knew, okay, well, I do a lot of these women's hair. I have to make a difference. I have to make a change. So at that point, I opened up a pole fitness studio where women could come in and not be in a nightclub or different places, and they would actually be able to come and teach their talent and teach it to other women as a fitness instead of going out getting money different ways. So that lasted for about 3 months. It was absolutely amazing. Business was amazing. Unfortunately, my business, they wanted to sell the building that I was in. So I had to literally move everything out. And guess who was there to help me move all my stuff on their lunch hour? Literally, guys. I can't even explain to you. And I just want you to think about your friends. Who do you know that you can call in an hour and they're gonna come in their suit? Her husband and his assistant came in a suit to help me move everything out of my shop. So I don't know what organizations you guys have been in, but I don't know anyone that's more sincere than SafeFamilies. So with all that being said, thank you guys so much for listening to my story. Teri is amazing, amazing. I mean, she's amazing. You have to keep her, because she can get you through anything. So thank you guys. And her husband too. I mean, he's like a 2-for-1 special. Thank you. Y'all have a great day.
Of course, I'm always advocating for our families. Christy, I hope you don't mind me sharing, she's looking for a new place to have her business. So just keep that in mind if you have any ideas. Kind of like a station that might be kind of private that she could do her braiding. Give us a call and I'll pass it on. I'll hook you guys up. So I'm going to hand it over to Dick for our conclusion.
Well, thanks, Teri. Well, thank you, ladies, for testifying there. This is for the soft close. If you look in your program, we have a commitment sheet if you want to take a look at that. I was impacted today. We talking about relationships. The former director of Human Resources, Brian Johnson, he was the interim director for 18 months. You might recall when we asked our community for foster care families, but we used to play a game at White's Restaurant. We used to draw a T account and write who we could call at 12 o'clock at night and who would respond by 6 a.m. and we'd make that list. It could either be for money or it could be for help out or whatever. And then on the right-hand side, we would write a list of names of who would we respond to at 12 o'clock at midnight. And of course, the challenge was to have the list on the right-hand side longer than the list on the left-hand side. And Brian and I used to play that every time we had lunch a lot. We discussed people and relationships, and boy, Dave, you just said that over and over again. Fair Boris, thank you very much for taking your time to showing up today. That was really appreciate that, my friend. And let's make this really a productive day. We've seen what can happen when we come together. Thank you very much.